Hello, everyone, and welcome in. So excited to have all of you with us. As you join, let us know in the chat where you're joining us from, your location and your org. And today's question, we always do a question, is what was your favorite storybook or story series growing up? I loved Where the Wild Things Are, or maybe it's the story that you love reading to your kiddos or something like that. We'll ask Matthew his when we get to start at the top of the hour, but let us know in the chat where you're joining us from and what was your favorite storybook or story or kind of the thing you loved. Okay, Margaret loved Dr. Seuss. I loved Where the Wild Things Are. I can't imagine why that's a fit, but yeah, Charlie Bone. Okay, Trisha, that's very interesting. I love it. Welcome in, everybody. We're so happy to have you. A chocolate mousse for dinner. Well, that's appropriate to South Dakota. Wait, do they have mousse in South Dakota? There's my South Dakota ignorance right there, Joelle. So I need to know this stuff, right? Got to know if they've got mousse in South Dakota. If you give a mouse a cookie, Junie B. Jones. Okay, Where the Sidewalk Ends. Oh, Fiona. That's a big one for me. I love Shel Silverstein. Oh, and apparently you can give moose muffins as well. I love it. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Love You Forever. Love the Narnia series with some green eggs and ham. We're talking about what our favorite storybooks were or storytellers when we were growing up, or that was while we introduce ourselves for today, since we're going to be talking about storytelling and really diving in. So I'm really interested to hear what your favorite story or maybe the thing that you love to read to your kids. Berenstain Bears, I remember that. The Pokey Little Puppy. Oh, I love a little golden book. Victoria, I love Nancy Drew too. My mom had an original set that I just loved. Charlotte's Web, a classic. I love that. Goodnight Moon. Okay, mine was Where the Wild Things Are. I'm sure many of you are not surprised by that. Okay, love Ferdinand the Bull. Love that. Little Bear. I haven't had that one. All the Places You'll Go. Rhonda, that reminds me that when I worked at Rollins College, when someone would leave the Department of Advancement, they would give them a copy of All the Places You'll Go, and everyone would sign a great message in it. And that was kind of their parting gift. And I always thought that was a really great parting gift. So love that. Okay, well, I'm so excited to have you all with us and talking about storytelling today. We have brought one of our friends, Matthew, not Matthew the unicorn, but Matthew from Rustic Roots. He helps us out with video storytelling, and that's really his passion. And so we are excited today to get kind of all of your thoughts around storytelling with video, any of those thoughts that you might have. But so Matthew, I'm going to make you join the conversation by saying, what was your favorite story or storytelling series from growing up?
I would say, I think growing up, I saw in the chat someone mentioned Winnie the Pooh, and that's definitely one. I probably more geared towards the film than I was the books, but and then definitely reading to my kids was Are You My Mother, which is always funny because they've read it dozens and dozens of times, but it still makes them laugh every time.
I love it. And when I was a kid, I was a sucker. I had a ton of little golden books, but I was also a sucker for anything that had a pop-up or a feel or something different that wasn't just a book, which is part of the sensory storytelling experience. So Matthew, we're going to get a lot of questions from our audience today, but until they get warmed up and asking you lots of questions. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into storytelling for nonprofits and like where that originated in your life's journey?
Yeah, so I've been doing video storytelling since I guess long before, maybe not long before, but before college. Was doing a lot of simple things here and there, but a lot of like work for my church growing up and other little organizations. So it honestly started off the impact and the video side kind of started really at the same time. And so kind of got into that, got into the technical side by doing a lot of AV type stuff. But really jumped right in. Went to school for it. Went to a couple in-house jobs here and there, but it never really fully got scratched the itch. And so we started Rustic Roots almost 10 years ago, and really saw the need for storytelling in the impact world and the nonprofit world. So really excited about jumping in and helping organizations.
Yeah. So we know that video is kind of all consuming right now, especially those of us who may or may not have insomnia and at 2 a.m. we take a spin through Reels or TikTok. But what are, like, if you had to say, what are the top three things that you're seeing in terms of maybe just overall video first, and then maybe we can dig into video storytelling second?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's so much video, and I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of the tech platforms pushing it in their algorithms. I mean, I literally saw someone a couple years ago put a job posting in as a video, and all it was is the text slightly moved this way for 5 seconds, but they knew it was enough to get in the algorithm. So we're definitely seeing people try a lot of creative ways like that. But I've always been a big tried and true testimonials kind of guy, like telling the stories of people that we serve, people that we've helped, and really trying to help them use their voice to make a change, to be a part of partner with us at least in the storytelling and the mission aspect. So I think I don't know if that's three, but I'm always a big fan of testimonials, and they kind of always stand the test of time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the way we create video has changed a lot. So you work for a firm that helps us create video, but I'm going to ask the question because it's sitting right there is, can we also create our own video content? And when, like, maybe the question is, when's a good time for me to do it myself? And when's a good time for me to call in a professional?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of the democratization of video has really come about where everything's a lot easier to use. It's a lot more professional. Even my webcam right now is my phone. I've used my phone all the time. So there's definitely a lot of options. It really comes down to the biggest thing the pitfall I see with a lot of people with DIY is the editing of it. And that's really where you get where it's and there's multiple people talking and there's multiple interviews and you're making it more complex. That's usually when that extra professional help, just because the editing can be so much more. But if it's real simple, that with some text on it, maybe for like an Instagram story or a reel, those are definitely something that really anyone can do, and especially with the phones getting a lot better. But really, it's when you add that extra complexity, or when you really want to use it for something more than awareness. I would say that would be the other thing I'd be on the lookout for is I need this video to have this sort of ROI, or I need it to fit into this campaign. That's usually when it's just you have a little bit more investment in it. But definitely on the everyday stuff, on promoting the free family night at your museum, that stuff should be done by the marketing department. It's just so easy to jump in there and do and not as complex.
So it's really interesting because you say that should be a lower lift. A lot of us face struggles with our marketing department in that they want everything to be super polished, super brand, super fancy. And and how do we balance having something that looks really good? Because none of us want our videos to look bad, although there is something to be said for organic looking content. How do we balance that with it's going to take us 6 months to do a video and we're never, perfection is the enemy of finished.
Yeah, as a struggling, frustrated perfectionist myself, if I could figure out that, I'd be golden. I think it's, there's definitely that extra polish that's needed, and really I think templating is probably really the key to that. It's doing the work up front, and sometimes it's even partnering with someone that can do a quick graphics package or can do a little bit of work. We've even done stuff with people where we've jumped into Canva and done a few little stuff for them so that they had it ready to go. But really, I think it's really relying on things like templates, relying on things that can simplify and streamline the process. And I know Canva. I mean, Canva is a stand-in for lots of things. I mean, Canva is just one of many platforms, but they're really good at putting that brand right up front. So if you, even on the non-video side, I do it all the time. There's a little button you can push on there that just shuffles your brand colors, and just sometimes it's clicking a few times to make it kind of look right. But I think really relying on a lot of the templating is probably your best bet. It's not always the flashiest, but if you can do some of the work up front, and then let the rest of it be a little bit more organic.
I love that. And I love that you're mentioning, software that we have. Like most of us have access to Canva. That's an accessible thing where, sometimes and I agree. I think the editing and really the storyline is where professionals like yourself can really come in and provide us great value. Carolyn has a question. In addition to Canva, which is a great free tool, are there any others that you have found useful, but that may still be somewhat approachable with videos and graphics? Like there's All the Way, which you're probably using a big suite of software, but are there others along the way?
Yeah, I think the one I've been using actually a lot recently is CapCut, which is like, I guess it's somewhat connected to TikTok, I think. And their online platform, the desktop version. I don't think I've really used the phones are just too small to get real complex. But I've used their platform even alongside of some of the professional stuff, especially for the subtitling features and a lot of the extra stuff they have and some of the AI capabilities. So that's kind of a good in between. It's still a little bit of a jump. It's still a little bit overwhelming. And then, if you're on a Mac, I mean, I think iMovie just keeps going. And iMovie is really great too, because it does have the ability to import straight into something like a Final Cut Pro, which is what we use. I know some of the Adobe platforms do similar things. So I think a lot of places have a entry level tool. And if you can find it where it has a pipeline into the higher end tool, then you can do most of the work and then send it over to someone to really add that extra little bit of touch.
Love that. So helpful. And, we're agreeing with you. Not all of us have nimble fingers to whiz around the phones. Our friend Kelly says, in today's day and age, what amount of time do you think is the sweet spot for a video? And I'm going to give you the caveat that I like to give myself. I know he's going to say it depends, but maybe you could give us a couple categories of videos so that we would know what, because 30 seconds isn't right for every video.
Correct. Yeah, I think, and you stole it from me. I was going to say it depends, mostly as a joke, but it really does. And I think some of the factors, and I'll get a little bit to the types. I think both can work. It's really the audience that you have. I mean, we talk to a lot of people that have a big 2,000 person gala, and then they're like, "Hey, we need a 45-second video." And it's like, those kind of things. When you have the more captive your audience is, the more you can tell a longer story. So for those, we tend to be kind of in that 3 to 5. Five's kind of pushing it, but that 3 to 5 minute range. And then if you're on social, that's kind of on the other side of it, where you want it to be a lot smaller, or at least a lot more busy, a lot faster pace, you're trying to capture attention early. But I think there's even a place for even longer. I mean, it's not, again, it depends on the audience, but we work with a lot of people if they're celebrating a big legacy anniversary. And those ones do take a little bit longer because you're telling a little bit longer story. You may be telling a 50th, a 100th anniversary, and those are a lot more there. But usually the people that are going to those kind of events know what they're getting into. And so really trying to find that audience. But yeah, I think those gala type videos, those mini documentary type videos, it's just really hard to get a lot of information and a lot of story across in a very short amount of time. But I would say that kind of 3 to 5 is where we kind of bounce around. And then, on like a single testimonial, I think that's where, when you don't have that added complexity of multiple interviews, then I think you can get away with more of a minute and a half to 2 to 2.5. But that's kind of a sweet spot for us. I like a little bit longer form. I like a little bit more of stuff you can sit in and kind of absorb. I know the attention spans are definitely getting shorter scientifically, but I also think if we don't push back, they're just always going to be shorter. So I'd rather let's work on ways to kind of increase that attention span and find ways of telling longer stories, and sometimes that's splitting it out into 5 different clips that go out once a week, maybe after the big event. So to kind of on the tail end. And that's kind of a way of telling that longer story. You're telling 10 minutes of a story, but you're doing it over a month period. And you're kind of leading people along with you while you're going and gathering
Yeah.
support and gathering audience that way.
Yeah, episodic or serialized content really can, help change the attention span of people. It always amazes me. I know people have a short attention span, except for things they really want to pay attention to. Every Saturday, I have a very long attention span for college football. But then when it comes to things that I'm not very interested in, I have a very short attention span for it. So it's all about who's telling the story. Is there a good story? I go into the weekends hoping for good games. I want the game to be competitive the whole time. I want to be glued to it, and when it's a blowout, it's not as fun to watch because there's not the story there as well. Sarah Kirby and I were both kind of noodling on the same thing. I was thinking of it from one angle is we work with a lot of super intelligent people. Who aren't always dynamic on camera. That's the nice way to put serious academics. And then she looked at it from a different perspective, is how do we have students feel more organic when they're trying to get a message across? Like when I work with students, I don't ever script them. I always interview them and I get much better content. But she wants to know about coaching. How do we get people who are ridiculously uncomfortable on camera to at least be perceived as comfortable on camera or less stilted? Or how do you pull out authentic moments in storytelling from folks?
Yeah, I think you mentioned interview questions. I think that's we found a big key, and it's hard because sometimes you do need that direct to camera. Yeah, sometimes you need that ask that's at the end. It needs to be direct to camera, but I think having that more of that conversation aspect. And I think in some ways it's also in some of the prep. We actually found that too much prep will actually put people in a bit of a spiral. Whereas it's maybe we're going to talk about three topics, and they're all topics we're not going to throw anything you don't know about in there, and then coming at it with some questions that we can ask. But I think a lot of it's just making people feel really comfortable with the setup, with the situation. If it's if you're at an organization that has a little bit more of a sensitive mission, a lot of times we'll have a staff worker or a caseworker do the interview. So we'll still be overseeing it. We'll still be writing all the questions, but having it be someone that person knows can be really helpful, especially again if it's any kind of sensitive um, organization, sensitive mission. It really helps break down a lot of those barriers, and really enables them to kind of help tell that story. And sometimes it's continuing to do it, and continuing to ask the question. But there's a couple little tricks. I mean, if someone's getting hung up on maybe you have an interview of 7 questions. If someone's getting tied up on one of the questions, I almost always put it to the very end. I know a lot of people like, oh, let's redo that question. I like to put it at the very end, clear that person's mind, go to something easy. We'll start off with easy questions, and we'll use the why do you do what you do? That kind of question, we'll put that at the end, because that's the stuff that's going to make them emotional. We put it at the end. But I think it's just structuring it so that you're kind of building on it. Your later questions are going to be a little bit more hard hitting, if you will. But those earlier questions, and even just getting it in the sound check. It's just, hey, tell me about the last movie you saw or book you read, and then just getting them kind of comfortable with that.
Yeah, I also think, as a person who does a lot of the interviewing for folks on camera, I try to meet with them first to build trust before we film. Because if you're the first time they're meeting the interviewer is when they're going on film, I say film, I'm old. But it's right, it's too much. It's too overwhelming. And you're right, like some preparation, but not over coaching. I also think having a good time. So putting them in an environment they're comfortable. A lot of the times we're like, okay, wear this, do this. I often remind people to wear things that they love, that they're comfortable in, or, something that they can look to off camera or behind the camera that really makes them smile. I think it's part of the interviewer's job to make someone feel as comfortable as they can. And also disarm them with questions that you're not going to use in the video. For example, like that's why we start every webinar with a question getting our attendees involved, right? Like, how do we pull you into our world so that it's not this, here comes a formal webinar and the slides and things like that. So I love that. I love that. So hopefully, Sarah, that will help. I also, for the academics, for those who are super intelligent, I try to get them to talk about what they're passionate about and then let their passion kind of exude rather than throwing them straight into questions that they're not very comfortable with. So something to think about. So Matthew, you mentioned that you have the privilege of working with organizations that do some really difficult work sometimes, whether it's domestic violence or sensitive situations, or maybe working with people in the disease community or things like that. How do we deal with storytelling in an ethical way? In fundraising, there used to be the whole, is it Suzanne Summers? Is that what that was that had who was it? Suzanne. Oh, she had the African children and she was like, for 66 cents a day, and very exploitative content. How can we, especially those of us that have privilege, work on being thoughtful with those that have been marginalized? And also, I want to add in, a lot of us compensate those who are telling their story or give them the option. Sally Struthers, thank you, Trisha. We give them the option to be compensated for their time as well. But how do you work with communities where you're dancing that fine line where the story is powerful, but we also don't want to exploit anyone?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and definitely one we can sink down into a very short soundbite. I think a lot of it is just being aware of where a lot of the people are coming from, and really setting up things that empower the individual. So even just thinking of very small things, like if we're working with an organization, and if we're allowed and able to do an in-person interview with a subject, a lot of times I will put the microphone on a boom pole above them rather than putting on a lavalier mic. Just little things like that just make people feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, like it's not, that we're not, putting them in a light and just adding that extra bit of comfort. But I think, it's thinking through the ethics of it, I think it's get a bit lost here. So I think I think the exploitive type, I think it's really just helping them empower them and bringing them along with the mission. And there are a lot of organizations and a lot of organization types that you can't do interviews like that. And it's coming up with different ways of having a combined narrative of multiple different stories that you can tell. Or we had one where we had an organization that were just reading letters, and they still edited the letters, but they had them reading them on camera so that you could still get a lot of that emotion. But it's really it's doing things in a way that really respects and upholds the dignity of the people we're interviewing, and each case is a little bit different. Some people are a little bit more open to that, but it's things like having informed consent and allowing that person to come back later and say that they don't want that story out there anymore, and being able to change their mind, and trying not to do any additional harm. I think it's the big thing, but a lot of it is being active on that before you push publish, before you click send, just stop and think like, what will this help the person that we're helping? Can this do any harm in the future and now? And then just really, it kind of comes down to that partnership and that relationship, and having that relationship with the individual that you or someone on your staff can know, okay, we're good with this. We've avoided any pitfalls. And again, that's kind of where bringing in someone like a program staff or a caseworker into that, so it's not just you bearing all of that responsibility, but having someone that kind of knows some of the ins and outs that says, hey, can we avoid this color? Can we avoid this aspect? Or can we do it outside? Can we do things in a way that are a little bit different, that maybe the video has a little bit of a less of a quality to it, but it means that you're going out of your way, you're sacrificing yourself and your product for that individual. I think it's probably the biggest thing, is just being aware of it in a lot of ways, and being willing to sacrifice yourself for the sake of that person. I think one of the best comments I've received from a client, we were working in with an organization in Guatemala that was getting medical supplies and medicine to clinics, and we went into some people's homes, and I purposely avoided filming because it just felt that we hadn't really got that permission. It wasn't there. And on the way out, I got a text at the airport. I got a text that says, he actually thanked me for not recording. And I was like, that's a hard thing to, like, all of my production friends in the for-profit side wouldn't even get it. But it's just that, like, hey, it felt like that wasn't going to serve the people that we were there for. Maybe we missed a shot at some big soundbite, but it's just knowing that, willing to make that sacrifice for the people that we're serving.
I love that. I love putting our own priorities in the background and really thinking about those that we're working with. So Jake has a question, and it says, finding assets such as photos, graphics, animation templates, music, sound effects can be a challenge. He uses Envato, Envato. What are your subscription services that you love? Or what are the ones that you're like, you know what, we've used these and they've been a great experience for us?
Yeah, we use Envato a lot for some stuff. I find music is not always the best. It's a little stock music-y, but definitely on graphics and photos, little animation. stuff, and they also have graphics and templates that are specific to certain platforms. So if you are a little bit in the more advanced category of video editing, they've got specific templates for specific programs. As far as music, I think we've used Epidemic Sound and Soundstripe are the kind of the two. Soundstripe has a really good. They kind of feel like they're located in Nashville, so they have a very mission driven. A lot of their stuff I think they really cater to the church and places of worship scene. So I think a lot of that, it tends to kind of overlap really well with a lot of the social impact storytelling, and I find they have a really good feel for that stuff that doesn't really feel like it's overwhelming the interview or anything. But I would say, yeah, Envato has been great for us for assets like that.
Love that. Thank you. And if you have other questions for Matthew, let us know, whether they be tactical or strategic. So I'm going to ask you one. I have the good fortune of judging Case's video competition every year for Circle of Excellence Awards. And some things I'm like, if I never see this in video form again, like if I never see a dean in front of a wall of books in a wingback chair, or if I never see another really boring drone shot of campus opening a video, what are your like, okay, I'm Matthew, I do storytelling and video for a living. What are the things that you're like, oh man, like if we could let some of these trends go or some of these things die on the vine, I'm here for it?
That's a good question. I need to tread carefully in case people have done all these things.
It's okay. We've all done them. So it's totally okay.
I think, and things like the drone shot, things like the long gimbal shot. I think I don't look it, but I've been around enough to see things come and go. And so part of me, there are a lot of drone shots, and then one year and then they're not the other. But I think overall is that, yeah, I would say just the drone shot is a good one. And maybe that's just me not having a drone. But that may be part of it. I think there's kind of a reliance on like, well, okay, here, I'll go back to kind of a little bit what we were talking about before. I think it's that really focusing on the negative. Okay, we really want to show what this person was like before they got our services. We really want to dig deep, and we want it to be dark, and we want to recreate the scene of where I think that there's some ethical aspects to that. There's some trauma informed aspects to it. But I would say that was probably one. I think it's starting to die down, so it's hard to say that is a big one, because I think a lot of people are starting to not use that kind of imagery and that kind of. We really want to focus on empowering the individual and seeing them lifted up out of that. But I would say that that's probably the biggest one for me, is when you can kind of just see that easy win of, okay, we want to see I had one person at one point said we needed to go buy some needles to show that what was happening, and I don't know, that part just kind of always rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So our friend Fiona says, what's the most innovative or creative video you've seen recently, and what made it memorable for you?
That's a good one. I may have to think on that.
So we've stumped him. So we're going to give him some grace, and we'll come back around to it. This is what you should do for your interviewees when you're interviewing someone. Say, you know what, we'll circle back to that. And maybe some of you can drop in the comments what's the best video you've seen lately, and we can crowdsource the answer. So Matthew, Carolyn says, how do you get potential volunteers excited about being part of a video? She feels like she's getting the same people over and over again. How do you source maybe the person that isn't always the speaker for a department or isn't always the same 5 students over and over again?
Yeah, I think a lot of it can be utilizing technology. And I saw you all posted in the chat about the your friends and mine over at Memory Fox. But I think having something that, I mean, you're relying on them to record it, it's user generated content. But it does make people feel a little bit more comfortable about it. So I think in some ways, um, being able to send out an email that goes out to 100 different students and you get 20 different replies, but they may be very different than the people that you're doing. I think that is a good way of soft launching or a farm league, if you will, of trying to get them used to telling their story. And then you can look through that and then determine, oh, that person had a really great story. Let me reach out to them to bring them in to do something more professional or something more in person. But really, a lot of user generated content is probably would be the biggest thing to kind of narrow down. If you've got thousands of students, it's hard to narrow that down. But if you can send out a request for content that they can then submit themselves, it can kind of almost be a trial run for something more in depth.
Love that. Love that. Okay, Sarah says, okay, I've got a longer video and I don't have an event to show it at. Do I do targeted emails? Do I link it on social? Do I contact a donor and then send them an email link? Or maybe something that she hasn't thought about yet. What is something that Sarah could do to help get her video out there and get eyeballs on it?
I would say in some ways the easy answer is yes, but that's not helpful for Sarah. So I think it depends on if you can cut it up. I think that's part of it. If you can take a longer video and cut clips out of it. And then I think email is probably your best bet to really narrow down exactly who will watch it. Because the social media is going to be so quick. That's where you're going to want those little clips to then tease out something longer. And so maybe the clip, you can get a short little clip from it, have that tease it out so that the next week you post something else or you can retarget those people. But I would say probably email is probably your best bet. But I don't know, I kind of like the donor phone call part too. I like that very targeted aspect. If it's a big enough donor, one thing you can do is have little intros to the video itself. And so, either film it on your phone, or sometimes we've even set up a half day where we went through a giant list of donors in a certain giving society or something, and really just knock out every single one of them and add a personalized touch. That's where I think we found the sharpest ROI, at least, has been, where you can really target it down to 1 or 2 people. And then that way you get their attention early on. Hey, you've supported us in the past. Want to let you know a little bit about what we're doing in the future, this capital campaign, this new campaign here. And then it goes into the longer piece. But because you kind of captured them early on, they're a little bit more tied in and in for the longer piece. But that's not always, if you're doing that to 300 people, it's probably hard to do for everyone.
Great, thank you. Courtney has said, do you have tips on including audio or background music, or is it dependent on the type of video? Or if someone is speaking, do you let their voice stand alone, or do you put audio or music behind their voice?
I am a big fan of music behind. I think it adds something to it. I think in some ways you can kind of you get really close to that manipulative area, but we're doing this. It's not a journalistic enterprise here. We're we are some ways soft and manipulating, but we're telling the story, and I think the background music can convey some differences. It can convey little bits of emotion that maybe you just want to highlight in the person speaking. So you're not trying to have some darker music while they're being more cheerful and happy. You're not, having more happy music when it's more of a deeper subject. But I think something that kind of fits along with it and just kind of adds that little bit extra. I think it also, from a very technical standpoint, it can cover over a lot of deficiencies in the audio too. So if you have a clip and you're like, I love this clip, they say exactly what I need to say, but we just can't get the background noise out, or we can't get it to be exactly perfect. Having a little bit of music back there covers a lot of that. And so I think that I am a big fan of background music, even if it's not, I mean, definitely not making it distracting, but I am a big fan of putting it under almost anything, even some longer form stuff that's just more of a longer talk, just having a little bit of stuff, something in there, to kind of have just kind of a bed while you're talking, can be really impactful.
Love that. And as a reminder to everyone, please close caption your videos, right? So I thought I read a statistic a while ago that said 80% of videos are watched with the sound off. So as much as you're pouring into your music there, right? Like, also remember, we need to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to video. And, everybody listens or watches videos differently. I wish more people listened to them using headphones in airports, but that's a whole nother argument for a whole other day. But also making sure that your video is as accessible as possible, I think, is really important.
Yep, definitely.
Are there other baselines? Like, I was thinking, one of the elements for success in the storytelling videos that we help people do is start a storyboard. So how do like, one is ideating what we want the story to be, but can you talk a little bit about the storyboarding process, whether it's a literal storyboard or how you weave through a narrative with someone?
Yeah, it's storyboard is a funny thing. We don't do a ton of it just because a lot of our stuff tends to be almost documentary in nature, very interview heavy. So the traditional storyboard is, here's a person sitting down talking, isn't as impactful. But for us, it's really trying to, first off, we really start, getting the questions we want to ask the people that we're talking to. We get those down, and a lot of ways it's kind of reverse engineering the answers we want. Sometimes we'll have the answers. We're working with a community hospital right now that had an appeal that they used, a written appeal they used in their annual report earlier this year. And we're interviewing the person that they had already interviewed previously. And all we're doing is taking that written content and reverse engineering it into questions that we can ask. And so I think once you get kind of those questions, kind of laying out what you think the answers will be, and sometimes I guess you can start with the question, start with the answer. It all kind of evens itself out after a while, but lay it out and say, okay, we want to start with this person. We really hope that they say something similar to this, and then we'll go to this person because of these factors, and kind of mapping it out that way. And then being flexible, I think, is a big thing, because you'll get in there and the one person that you needed to say the thing that really fits in the script, they didn't say it. And just being flexible with, oh, but they said this other really great thing, or they said this piece, or this person came with a story we didn't even know in the pre-interview process. But a lot of that is, I think we really invest in the questions, and then outside of that, it's okay, if we got the answers we like, here's how we would lay it out, and that can even just be on a simple table, a 3-column table that's, the video, the audio, and the time. And being very flexible with it, I think, is big for us. It's just from 0 to 30, we'd like them to talk about this. We like the theme of the talk to be this. From 30 to 45 seconds, we'd like the theme to be this. So I think that's usually where we end up. We end up a lot more flexible, I think, than a very structured, it needs to be this. And of course, that's dependent on the video, but a lot of the more back and forth interview heavy pieces, if it's scripted and it's a voiceover and it's just voiceover and B-roll, that's a lot more scripted out and tighter.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate that. And I've answered a couple of questions in the Q&A about captioning. You know, not all of the automated captioning systems work well. It's best to have a human being do it and then add that file into your video, which is where good editing comes into play. Good, you know, monitoring of how many times a person appears in your video and making sure people know their names, making sure that they can identify with them as well. You know, what's the video, and I might be putting a stump on here, what's the video or the story that you want to tell that you haven't had the opportunity to tell yet, Matthew? You've gotten to tell lots of different stories, or is there something that you're like, you know, I wish we could do this project, or I wish I could get to the heart of this story to tell for nonprofits?
That's a good one. I don't know if there's anything that's really sticking out. I definitely got the travel bug earlier this year going down to Guatemala, so that definitely opens that itch as well. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I think we've told a lot of really great stories, and I don't know if there's a big white whale out there to tell. You know, I know a lot of people, you know, are trying to get to something bigger and long form, and they're hour and a half long documentary, and that would be cool. I would love that, but I don't know if there's a story out there that we haven't really been able to dig into.
And for our folks that are asking about captioning, you can add in manual captioning through editing software, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we do is we let the computer do 75-80% of the work, and then we watch through it, and then you can click on it and change it. So that's what we've done I know CapCut is really good, especially being a platform that is primarily for TikTok and social. They kind of have a lot of the captioning kind of built in. I know a lot of platforms have it built in right now. And actually the one that we use just now added it yesterday. So I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really hopeful. So a lot of the platforms have it built in, but it's do the automated, let it go and do all the work for you, and then kind of come back through and tweak it. And so if you need something even more in depth, I think the one we've used is called Simon Says. So it's called Simon Says Transcription, or I think they added the word AI in there recently. They're really good if you need a lot more deep dive, or there's multiple speakers, or you really need that extra bit. And we've also used them for translation. So back to the Guatemala example, we had interviews that were fully in Spanish, and I have some of my high school Spanish left. And so we actually used it to transcribe back into English, put it onto the video so that we could basically read the interview while we were editing it. And then the client came back when we were in the final stages and kind of helped us tweak it down to get the exact translation down. But it's utilizing the tech. It's letting the tech do most of it, but not letting it's like you would if you were doing something in ChatGPT. Like, you let it get you some of the way there, but don't click publish without looking over it.
So that you just, since I don't have any other questions, if you have other questions, we have about 10 minutes left with Matthew. Get them in now. But you just drove into a lane that I watched a conference presenter create video using AI, and it was weird and I don't think you're threatened by it at all right now. But where could AI help us um, in video storytelling? So captions is one place that we could use it. Are there places to lean into it or to lean out from it when it comes to storytelling?
Yeah, it's captions are definitely good because it's something, it's whatever you would do that's very repetitive, that's very time consuming, data entry type stuff. That's where the using the computer is really helpful. I think for me it, yeah, like you said, it's not a big threat right now, just because for what we do, it's testimonials, it's in-person filming, or even if it's not
Yeah.
in person, it's virtual. It's get telling those actual stories, and those are hard slash impossible right now, and possibly even into the future. But right now we're using it for even just to kind of get some stuff up and running, and maybe on the scripting side or bounce some ideas off. But definitely not leaving it to that, because I've seen some stuff come back to that, and obviously we're the ones that know about this stuff. We don't want to outsource that to AI. And the other thing is, because video is so dependent on the hardware and the software, we kind of have our hands tied until whatever platform we're using adopts AI into it. And
Yeah.
so what I've heard at some point they're going to do a lot more on, you can type into your video editor, give me a pic, I need a clip that's longer than 6 seconds of someone smiling, of a student smiling at the camera. And then it
Mm,
will pick and it'll give you all 32 of those from the past year and a half of footage. The problem is that we're all waiting on the software platforms to kind of really help us
yeah.
get there. So in some ways, it's kind of waiting. I mean, stuff like the captions, people are adding in some of the search functionality, but it's really just anything to kind of help get there faster. I've seen some work on AI kind of taking a longer form piece and clipping it down to social media clips. So it's kind of
Mhm.
taking the best of, um, and I think that could be really helpful in trying to narrow down maybe a long presentation. I mean, we've taken a long Zoom call and thrown it in there, and it's came back and gave us three little 30-second clips. Um, but again, it's like anything with AI, take that and then build off of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not content itself.
Mhm.
Yeah, love that. Well, um, I would come back around, but I have a last question for you. So our folks can reach you how if they want to talk to you, even if they just want to, you know, mull over something with you. They don't have to hire you as a video creator to do everything. I know you're very dedicated to our community, but also if they want to talk through possibilities, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, rusticroots.co is our not .com, but .co is our web address, and there's some examples and some of our work. And I'm mostly on LinkedIn. I love living on LinkedIn, and really love that community. Have been able to build. It's great seeing people on there that I don't see on a day-to-day basis. So I would say LinkedIn is there, and I'm always happy to chat. And definitely been really big on relationships early on, and building into those, whether they end up in something or not. We're really just big on being a part of this great community. So LinkedIn is probably the best route.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then, all right, I'm going to ask a guy who makes videos, maybe not movies, a tough movie question. Top two movies of all time. What are they?
I'm gonna change it to favorite because it's hard to say top.
Okay, favorite
My
two movies. Great.
I would say for me it's the original Episode 4 Star Wars, A New Hope. Um, I know a lot of people like some of the Empire Strikes Back, but I'm a big original guy. And then in a similar fashion, Fellowship of the Ring from the Lord of the Rings series. There's something about this the magic that had that the rest of the films definitely have, but that initial I think it's probably what I'm seeing now a pattern is that it's that initial entry into that world of whether it's Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, but just kind of that magic element, that magical element to being in the world.
I love that. Love that. Thank you so much for always supporting us, supporting our community. We really do appreciate you, Matthew. We have a new video that Matthew's team is working on for us coming out probably late November, early December to announce our 2025 conferences. So stay tuned. And everybody's giving you all the props in the comments. So thank you all so much. We hope you'll take our survey today. And thank you again, Matthew, for always helping and uplifting the good stories in our communities. Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks.